She was just trying to get home. But a uniformed officer stood in her way, blocking the boarding gate with a smug grin. "Sorry, ma'am, you're not getting on this flight," he said. The reason? Not because she was late, not because she had no ticket, but because of the color of her skin. What he didn't know was that she owned the entire airline, and by the time she was done, he wouldn't just lose his job, he'd lose the last shred of his dignity. This is the story of how a small act of racism spiraled into a public humiliation heard around the world. Make sure you subscribe and watch till the end, because you don't want to miss out on what happens next, plus many more thrilling stories will be coming your way. It was one of those sweltering summer afternoons when tempers seemed to run just a little shorter, and patience was in even shorter supply. The airport terminal in Atlanta was buzzing with the usual chaos. Rolling suitcases clattering over tiled floors, announcements blaring over the loudspeaker, and travelers moving in all directions with hurried steps and distracted faces. Amid that sea of movement, one woman walked with quiet purpose. Her name was Maya Johnson. She was in her early 40s, poised, confident, and dressed in a simple yet elegant cream pantsuit that spoke volumes without screaming for attention. A wide-brimmed hat shaded her face, and she carried a small leather travel bag, nothing flashy, but the kind you could tell was expensive if you knew quality. To the casual observer, she was just another passenger about to board her flight. But to those who knew her, which, in this particular airport, was no one, Maya was far more than that. She wasn't just flying on this plane. She owned the airline, not in a stockholder kind of way. She was the CEO and majority owner of Ascend Airways, a boutique but rapidly expanding airline known for exceptional service, sleek modern aircraft, and a reputation for treating passengers like royalty. It had taken her 2 decades to build it, starting from one small charter jet she purchased in her 20s. Today, Ascend Airways was valued at over $2.4 billion. But Maya didn't flaunt her success everywhere she went. She enjoyed moving to the world without the constant spotlight of business press or corporate events. Today, she was flying from Atlanta to Los Angeles on one of her own planes, not as the owner, but just as a traveler going about her day. She wanted to check in on service quality firsthand, without staff knowing the boss was on board. She approached the private boarding gate for Ascend's first-class passengers. Everything was on schedule, and boarding had just begun. That's when it happened. A uniformed airport security officer stepped directly into her path. He was tall, heavy-set, and wore the kind of smug expression that seemed permanently etched into his features. His name tag read, Officer K. Wallace. He gave Maya a once-over from head to toe, his gaze lingering just long enough to feel like an insult. "Ma'am," he said, holding up a hand as if she were some kind of trespasser, "I'm going to need to see your boarding pass and ID before you go any further." Maya handed them over without hesitation, her calm smile never faltering. Wallace glanced at them, then back at her. He frowned. "This says first class," he muttered, as though reading something unbelievable. "That can't be right." "Why not?" Maya asked evenly. "Because," he said with a chuckle that wasn't remotely friendly, "first class is for paying passengers, not for charity cases." Several nearby travelers turned to look. Maya felt her cheeks grow hot, not from embarrassment, but from the rising burn of anger. "Charity cases?" she repeated, her voice quiet but sharp enough to cut glass. Wallace crossed his arms. The words, "Don't look like you belong," hung in the air like a bad smell. Maya had heard them before, in various forms, throughout her life. Too many times. And it didn't take a genius to understand exactly what Officer Wallace meant. She straightened her shoulders. "I purchased my ticket like everyone else. Please step aside." But Wallace didn't move. He smirked, clearly enjoying the scene he was causing. "I'm going to need you to step over here for a baggage search." "Random screening," he added. though it was obvious to everyone watching that there was nothing random about it. Maya could feel the stares of strangers boring into her. She could see the pity in some eyes, the judgment in others. She took a slow breath. She was a moment away from revealing exactly who she was. But something in her told her to wait. "Officer Wallace," she said, reading his name again from the tag. "Do you often treat first-class passengers this way?" "Only the ones who can't prove they belong there." He shot back. "Now move it or I'll call for backup." That's when the tension broke. A man in a navy blue suit, one of the Ascend Airways senior flight attendants, stepped out from the jet bridge. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, looking between Maya and Wallace. "This passenger is attempting to board first class without authorization," Wallace said quickly. The flight attendant's brow furrowed as he took the boarding pass from Wallace's hand, scanned it, and looked back at Maya with sudden recognition. His face went pale. He knew exactly who she was. "Officer Wallace," the attendant said slowly. "There's been a mistake." "Mistake?" Wallace scoffed. "I don't think so." "Yes," the attendant said firmly. "This passenger isn't just authorized, she—" He stopped himself, glancing at Maya. She gave him the smallest shake of her head. "Not yet. I'll handle it from here," the attendant said instead. But Wallace wasn't about to let go of his power trip so easily. "She's not going anywhere until I say so." And that was when Maya made the decision. She wasn't going to just brush this off. No, this time, she would let the man dig his own grave. She folded her arms and said, "All right, call your backup. Let's make this official." Wallace smirked, as though he'd just won something, and reached for his radio. What happened next would be talked about by airport staff for years. The backup arrived. 2 more security officers, one of whom happened to be the shift supervisor. The supervisor listened to Wallace's exaggerated account, then turned to Maya. "Ma'am, can you confirm your travel details?" Maya reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. With a few taps, she brought up an email chain, one that included her as the executive signatory on several official airline memos. At the top of the screen was the Ascend Airways corporate header, alongside her name, Maya Johnson, CEO. The supervisor blinked. "Ma'am, you're—" "Yes," Maya said simply. "I own this airline." Silence. Pure, stunned silence. Wallace's smirk melted into confusion, then horror. "Wait, you're saying you—" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Maya interrupted, her tone now cold as steel. "And you just publicly harassed, humiliated, and attempted to block the owner of this company from boarding her own aircraft." The other security officers looked like they wanted to sink into the floor. The nearby passengers, who had been pretending not to watch, were now openly staring. Phones were coming out. Cameras were rolling. Maya could have ended it there. She could have walked on the plane and left Wallace to stew in his own embarrassment. But that wasn't enough. Not this time. "Officer Wallace," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the terminal. "You are hereby barred from boarding any Ascend Airways flight, effective immediately, and I'll be contacting airport administration regarding your conduct." Wallace opened his mouth to protest, but the supervisor stepped in, looking utterly defeated. "I think it's best if you step away, Wallace," he muttered. Maya turned to the flight attendant. "Shall we board?" The man nodded quickly, ushering her toward the jet bridge. But just before she stepped through, she glanced back at Wallace one last time. His face was red, his jaw tight, his eyes full of the realization that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his career. As Maya took her seat in first class, her seat on her plane, she couldn't help but wonder if this was truly over. Something in Wallace's glare told her it might not be, and she was right, because what happened next, just hours later in Los Angeles, would prove that this little confrontation at the gate was only the beginning. The plane cruised smoothly above the clouds, its engines humming softly in the background. Inside Ascend Airways Flight 218, first class was a picture of quiet luxury. Reclining leather seats, chilled champagne, and the faint scent of fresh orchids placed on every table. Maya Johnson sat in 2A, her cream pantsuit still immaculate, her wide-brimmed hat resting neatly on the seat beside her. She should have been relaxing. She should have been enjoying the signature service she spent years perfecting for her passengers. But instead, she kept thinking about Officer Wallace's glare back at the terminal. It hadn't been the look of a man simply embarrassed. It was something colder, something calculating. She sipped her champagne, tried to shake it off. She'd dealt with men like him before. Bullies who couldn't stand to be wrong, who needed power over others to feel important. Most of them faded away when exposed. But sometimes they came back. Halfway through the flight, her phone buzzed. She frowned. It was unusual for her to get a signal this high up, but Ascend's private onboard network allowed encrypted calls for certain VIP passengers. The name on the screen made her eyebrows lift. Marcus Green, her head of corporate security. She swiped to answer. Marcus. Maya. His deep voice said, urgent and low. I just got a call from an old contact at the TSA. You had a run-in with an airport security officer today. That's putting it mildly, she said. Why? Because 5 minutes after you took off, Wallace filed an incident report against you. Says you tried to forcibly bypass security and threaten an officer. Maya's hand tightened around her glass. That's a lie, and he knows it. Yeah, Marcus replied, but he also knows people. I did some digging. Wallace has ties to an influential airport union rep and a few friends in federal aviation enforcement. If he spins this right, he could cause trouble. Not legally, you're clean, but in the press. Think headlines. Maya exhaled slowly, forcing her voice to stay calm. So this isn't over. No, Marcus said. And there's more. I think he knows who you are now, and he's looking for leverage. That word, leverage, made something click in her mind. Wallace's look at the gate hadn't been random. It was the look of a man who decided he'd been wrong and wanted payback. She ended the call, her mind already racing through possibilities. When the flight landed at LAX, Maya expected the usual discreet escort to her car. Instead, as she stepped off the jet bridge, she saw 2 uniformed airport police officers waiting for her. Ms. Johnson, one asked. Yes, she said cautiously. We need to speak with you about an alleged incident in Atlanta. It wasn't an arrest. They were polite professional, but the sight of them was enough to make other passengers stop and stare. Phones were out again. She could almost hear tomorrow's headlines forming. Airline CEO questioned by police after security dispute. Maya knew she had to play this carefully. The officers walked her to a quiet room off the terminal. Inside was a man in a charcoal suit, holding a slim leather portfolio. He looked her over with a thin smile. Ms. Johnson, my name is Richard Kane. I represent certain administrative interests in this airport. I'm here to resolve the situation before it escalates further. Administrative interests, Maya repeated flatly. Meaning, Kane said, that Officer Wallace is upset. He feels humiliated. And humiliation can be expensive to undo. Maya's eyes narrowed. Are you extorting me? Kane raised his hands in mock innocence. Let's call it a goodwill arrangement. You make a small gesture to help his career recover. Maybe contribute to his union fund. And this all goes away. Otherwise, he tapped the portfolio. Otherwise, some rather damaging allegations about your behavior today might find their way to media. And investors can be so jumpy, can't they? For a long moment, Maya just stared at him. She could feel the trap tightening. The setup was obvious. Wallace had baited her into a confrontation, hoping she'd react badly. Now, they were twisting it into a weapon against her. But Kane didn't know who he was dealing with. "Mr. Kane," she said finally, her voice smooth as silk. "I built this airline from nothing. I faced Wall Street sharks, hostile takeovers, and smear campaigns from billionaires who wanted me gone. And I'm still here. So if you think a crooked officer and a two-bit fixer can scare me..." She stood, gathering her bag. "Then you're about to find out just how badly you've underestimated me." Kane's smile faltered for the first time. Maya walked out of the room without another word, but as she reached her car, her phone buzzed again. It was a text. No name, just a number she didn't recognize. The message read, "You should have played nice. You have no idea what's coming next." She stared at the screen, her mind turning over possibilities. Wallace wasn't bluffing. And whatever was coming, it was already in motion. Somewhere, far from the airport, a file was being opened. Names, dates, personal details, all about Maya Johnson, were being compiled. And the person building it wasn't just looking to humiliate her. They were looking to destroy her. The plane cruised smoothly above the clouds, its engines humming softly in the background. Inside Ascend Airways Flight 218, first class was a picture of quiet luxury. Reclining leather seats, chilled champagne, and the faint scent of fresh orchids on every table. Maya Johnson sat in 2A, her cream pantsuit still immaculate, her wide-brimmed hat resting neatly on the seat beside her. She should have been enjoying the signature service she'd spent years perfecting. Instead, she kept thinking about Officer Wallace's glare back at the terminal. It wasn't the glare of embarrassment. It was the glare of a man plotting something. Halfway through flight, her phone buzzed. It was Marcus Green, her head of corporate security. "Maya." His deep voice came, urgent and low. "Wallace filed an incident report saying you tried to bypass security and threatened him." "That's ridiculous," she said. "Yeah, but he's got friends in the right places. They could spin this and make it look bad, especially in the press. Think about how it plays. Black CO attacked security officer." Maya's jaw tightened. She knew that headline too well. When she landed in LAX, 2 uniformed airport police officers waited for her. They escorted her to a small conference room. Inside sat Richard Kane, Wallace's fixer, in a tailored suit. He spoke smoothly. "Officer Wallace feels humiliated. We can make this all go away. Small donation to the union. A public apology. Otherwise," he tapped his leather portfolio, "we leaked some very damaging allegations." Maya's eyes locked on him. "So let me get this straight. You and Wallace tried to publicly humiliate a black woman at the gate, and now you want to pay you for the privilege of keeping quiet?" Kane just smiled. "That's business." Maya leaned back slowly, pulling out her phone. "That's interesting, because you know what else is business? My airline's partnership with the Department of Homeland Security. You might want to ask your friend Wallace what happens when TSA Internal Affairs gets a copy of a recorded conversation involving extortion on airport property." Kane froze. "Recorded?" Maya tilted her phone, showing a small blinking red icon. "California is a 2-party consent state. But lucky for me, airports fall under federal jurisdiction. And federal investigators love cases involving corruption tied to racial harassment." Kane's smirk vanished. "You wouldn't..." "Oh, I already did," Maya cut in. "You're live streaming to my legal team, who are currently forwarding this to DHS, the FAA, and every journalist who covered Wallace's last public incident. And in about," she glanced at her watch, "2 minutes. They'll also receive footage from the security cameras at Atlanta International. You know, the ones that show Wallace stopping me before I even reach the security line." The color drained from Kane's face. "Now," Maya continued, standing, I suggest you call your friend Wallace and tell him to start packing, because by tomorrow morning, his badge will be gone, his pension frozen, and every major outlet will be running the headline. Racist officer caught extorting black airline CO. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The weight of her words filled the room. As she walked out, the two airport police officers who had escorted her earlier exchanged glances. One of them, a young black officer, gave her the faintest nod. By the time Maya reached her car, her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a threat. It was a breaking news alert. TSA confirms investigation into Officer Wallace, suspended without pay pending federal charges. The next morning, social media was on fire. Hashtag Justice for Maya trended in every major city. Passengers posted their own stories of Wallace's behavior. News anchors replayed the footage of him blocking her at the gate, cutting off his excuses in real time. In an emotional segment, a morning talk show praised Maya's composure and power in the face of targeted harassment. One host summed it up perfectly. This is why you don't judge people by the color of their skin or underestimate who they are. Sometimes the person you're trying to keep off the plane owns the plane. Maya didn't celebrate. Not yet. She knew men like Wallace didn't go quietly. But for now, justice had been served, publicly and without apology. And as she looked out over the runway from her office that afternoon, she allowed herself the smallest smile. Because this time, the story hadn't been written by Wallace. It had been written by her. And that's how Maya Johnson turned a moment of blatant racism into a lesson in courage, power, and standing up for what's right. Maya turned harassment into triumph and showed the world that standing up for yourself can change everything. Remember, no act of injustice is too small to challenge, and sometimes the people you underestimate hold the greatest strength. If this story inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share, and subscribe for more thrilling tales of resilience, justice, and extraordinary moments that change lives. Join us, and let's uncover the stories that demand to be told. Tell them and encourage ourselves to make a change with them. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.